President Donald J. Trump. Is he really fit or is he fat? In this episode of the podcast, we'll share what we know in this first episode of the series. So tune in and take notes.
Welcome to the CrossFit Edwardsville Community Podcast, where we hear and learn from our coaches, CrossFitters, and Glen Ed community leaders. Now, here are your hosts, Dallas and Greg.
What's up, guys? Coach G here at CrossFit Edwardsville. And in this series, we're going to investigate the physical fitness, what we know about our president, Donald J. Trump. In this first episode of the series, we'll lay out what we can see as what I call the casual observer, just kind of outside looking in, not getting super deep into the weeds or the details of like his actual medical records. We'll observe what can we see based on his physical fitness, and what conclusions can we draw based on that. And we're going to take this through an apolitical lens. We're not looking at this through the lens of a person's like political policies or anything like that, but purely just in terms of what we know about best practices in health and wellness. What can we patently see with President Donald J. Trump, the good and the bad, and what conclusions do we draw from that? So let's get right into it. I'll start by outlining what's visibly good with President Trump's health and physical fitness. Right off the bat, he seems to have extraordinary levels of energy and stamina. It is notable that this guy, who's now 78 years old, seems to keep up an extraordinarily busy schedule, meeting with world leaders and talking on podcasts and doing interviews and getting grilled and interviewed and interrogated by all manner of people, doing negotiations that are literally like potentially world changing. This is very obvious that he has an extraordinary level of physical stamina and energy, and that is commendable. And it does point to, or at least signs, that potentially there's a lot of health and fitness going on with President Trump. This is a good thing. It's a check in the right direction. Let's put it that way. So let's talk second, cognitive performance. You know, whether you love him or you hate him, whether you think that he's a fascist, aspiring dictator, evil genius, or if you think he's the savior of America, nobody out there contends that Donald Trump is dumb. It is very, very clear that he's got, especially for a 78-year-old man, a very high level of cognitive function. He's very sharp, very quick. He can answer the toughest questions in coherent, thoughtful ways, and even does what, I think he's called, like the workaround or the dance around, where he'll start answering a question, he'll go through 5 or 6 different angles and topics and then bring it back to the start. I forget exactly what he's called that, but the gist of the story is that he does seem to be retaining quite a bit of mental acuity, even in these later years, which is probably way more than we could say for the average 78-year-old. So another check in the favorable corner is his cognitive performance. And in the next episode of the series, I'll actually include what we know based on neurological, medical examinations of him. I'll include actual data on that. In this series, this episode of the series, I should say, we're just looking from the outside in, not digging into the medical reports yet. What can we observe as casual observers? So next thing, that's good. His golf hobby. I believe that I saw that he has gone out to play golf 280 times during his presidency, which, having an active hobby like golf would be a check mark in the box of suggests healthy, suggests fit, because it does take a level of agility, coordination, core strength, rotational strength, acuity, speed, and power to hit the ball, but then also precision and accuracy. There's a lot to be said about having a golf hobby that does point in the direction of physical fitness, especially when you are as prolific in terms of your activity volume, playing golf as often as he does does suggest that he has a relatively high level of physical fitness. The last thing I want to point to as a casual observer is what I call his posture. Now, it's very interesting because I've studied body language from all the greats, Navarro, negotiation stuff. And what we can observe is that President Trump's posture does seem to vary quite a bit based on who he's around and how he's feeling or how he's reacting to what he is hearing, for example. So there's a lot of variability. And I know that you can find exceptions to what I'm about to say, but generally speaking, he does seem to stand and sit tall and proud with a proud chest and good posture, which is actually a sign of physical health and energy and vitality versus somebody who would stand or sit with more slumped or slouched posture, which we often see in the older populations. People in their high 70s, low 80s often have that rounded thoracic spine. They're more curved over. We don't see any signs of that with President Trump. So you could look to his posture as potentially one other external expression of what might be good health and vitality on the inside. So that's the stuff that is good. Let's now look to the stuff that is bad, or what are the signs that maybe he's really just fat. First up, his physique. I believe his data is he's 6'3" tall and 239 pounds, which is a BMI of 30 plus, which is clinically obese. And I know people who are over 6 feet in the 240 pounds weight class, and the really physically fit ones that I know don't look like Donald Trump. To put it another way, he does not have the physique of a fit person. Period, full stop, end of story. He has a lot of abdominal fat going on, which abdominal fat is not a flag for great health and wellness. We can't draw a lot of conclusions about it, but if we purely look at it from the external, from the outside in, he does not typically have what we would consider to be a healthy body or lean physique, especially if you compare how he looks to, say, like how Robert F. Kennedy Jr. looks. They're not the exact same age, but they're roughly the same age. When you look at RFK, that dude looks like an athlete. He looks fit. He has visible, toned, defined muscle. He's not sporting a lot of extra body fat. Donald Trump is. So his physique does not suggest a healthy and well person. So that's a check mark in the negative side. Here's another thing that's a check in the negative side for fit versus fat: his apparent disdain for traditional exercise. When asked about this in the past, Donald Trump has expressed that he's disinterested in your traditional exercise, your cardio, your resistance training, your weightlifting, or whatever, because he believes that it tends to sap his energy versus give him energy, which is exactly what a person would say if they have done neither of these things before. It's a very obviously incorrect statement. If you actually go and do cardio, actually go and do resistance training, the energy that you get is way higher versus the energy that you lose. So given that he has some kind of feeling, some kind of way about traditional exercise and seems to shun traditional exercise, here's the thing. If you're not actually doing resistance training, you are losing muscle mass as you age. That is a fact of life. None of us are exempt from this, certainly not the president. So he probably doesn't have the internal muscle mass that he could have. He probably is not avoiding the very, very normal muscle wasting stuff that happens as we age. His disdain for weightlifting is actively hurting his fitness. So this is a check mark in the negative box. And finally, let's talk about what we know about his diet. What we know about his diet is that he has a definite affinity for McDonald's and KFC and Diet Coke. And all of that is bullshit. All of that is stuff that people should not eat at all. It's not doing him any good. The Diet Coke is literally giving him nothing positive or health affirming, or it's just bad news bears. He has a well-established track record of eating quite a bit of fast food, especially around dinner time. And nobody is going to be exempt from the consequences of eating a whole lot of fast food. No matter how special you think you are, if you're eating a whole lot of fast food, you're going to have negative health consequences because of that. The president would certainly be no exception. So I have to counterbalance that we know about these proclivities for fast food and soda. We know about those, and we know that his wife, Melania, and RFK have pushed him in the direction of trying to eat healthier. And I know that in the news, there were some reports that he had lost 30 pounds as he was moving towards like his final run at the presidency or his inauguration or something like that. He lost 30 pounds, allegedly. And maybe he did. And apparently it was partly because of the encouragement or the pushing of RFK and Melania for him to actually clean up his diet and eat less processed crap and eat more healthy food. I have to balance the fast food side with the fact that he probably does not make the majority of his own meal. Let's be real. He's not making any of his own meals, period. End of story, right? So he probably has White House chefs that are making him the majority of the meals that maybe we don't see behind the scenes. And those are probably, I would wager, spared no expense, probably the finest, highest quality foods known to man, the highest quality foods available. If the White House chefs are making his breakfast, if he eats breakfast, his lunch, if he eats lunch, is probably really high quality stuff. That does not the same thing as saying that he's making great food choices based on what is offered to him. But I gotta think that he's got the finest avocados and the greatest, highest, most nutrient dense eggs possible. If anybody on the White House staff is making him eggs and avocado toast, for example, you know what I mean? So behind the scenes, there's probably at least some healthy food intake to offset all of the processed nonsense that he is consuming in the public eye. His diet overall, probably not a checkbox in the favorable column in the fit versus fat balance. Anyway, so to recap, what we know as casual observers, what is good for President Trump, his stamina and energy, his cognitive performance, especially given his advanced age, his golf hobby, and his posture. What's bad is his physique, his apparent disdain for traditional exercise, and what we know about his diet, what we concretely know about his diet. So this is a recap of part one. Hopefully this was both entertaining and educating for you guys. We will see you guys and talk more about exactly what we know based on his medical records. We'll tell you more about that in the next episode of the podcast. So until then, cheers.
Thanks for listening to my dad's podcast. For more useful tools and guidance, go to CrossFitEdwardsville.com and feel free to like, share, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comment sections down below. See you in the next episode.